Steal from the winners, but you don't have to copycat everything they do.
And I mean, you would go in and convert a particular doctor, and then you go in the next day and that doctor's using a competitor. And you're like, wait, I just converted you yesterday, and now you're using the competitor the next day. So like, you gotta be on point.
A lot of early stage device companies, they think once you've gotten the PO, you've won the account. On to the next one. Conquest is over.
Oh, yeah.
I want to be just like the big company. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You want to be different and lean into the things that make you different and better.
At the big companies, they do X, or they do Y, or they do Z. And you're like, okay, well, that's great that they do that, but we should do ABC instead of XYZ. And because it's better and it's faster.
I agree that there are some villains out there, right? Some vampires, but I kind of want to push back a little bit.
There's a difference between having a clinical champion that's literally will knock down the CEO's door, and the CEO's like, oh shoot, he's coming, I gotta listen to him, versus someone that is always asking for something and it just doesn't mean anything, right?
Hey everyone, Spencer Jones here, founder at Medtech. Welcome to this episode of the Medtech Innovation Podcast. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Jason Scherer, CEO of VitaTek, the largest privately owned medical device manufacturer in Minnesota. Jason's a visionary leader and inventor with 20 years of experience in the med device industry. Jason has successfully built a 40-plus person sales team, which is incredibly hard to do. I've tried to do that before. Launched more than 20 devices and has 2 device exits to Johnson & Johnson under his belt. I know this is going to be a good one. Jason and I share a lot of the same feelings about what's broken in medtech and what's working well. So I'm really excited about this. Jason, welcome to the pod. Where do we find you today?
Thanks, Spencer, for having me. I super appreciate it. Yeah, today I am in Minnesota in one of our 3 locations. I'm at the manufacturing plant here. So in White Bear Lake, Minnesota.
I honestly love that you're like, it feels like you're almost like in the bullpen, just like with man of the people. You know what I mean? For the audio listeners out there, you can see the busy hands and feet of VitaTek around in the background. And I know we're going to get much more into VitaTek in detail and hear more about that story, but I think the audience and me personally, I would love to hear a little bit more kind of about the journey, getting to where you got the experience that kind of like formed you into, this medtech killer that you are. So Olympus is where you started and kind of cut your teeth in sales, correct?
Yeah. So actually before that, I got picked up by a 1099 in Arizona. And so being from Minnesota, being a northerner, loving the 4 seasons, I got the only way that I could get into the medical device industry was through a 1099 in Tucson, Arizona. So I am eternally grateful that I got the opportunity to move down to Tucson and to cut my teeth down there. But yeah, 1099, we had 20 some product lines, and one of them being Gyrus ACMI at the time.
I actually really like Arizona. We get 4 seasons here in Arkansas, but I really like Arizona. And I'll caveat that with saying I haven't been there in like the dead of summer.
Right.
So like I probably would like it a little bit less, but like go in February, it's amazing. And I'm a big golfer, so like golf's huge there. You play golf by chance?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything under 100, I'm a happy camper. And I think that's my style.
A shockingly small percentage of golfers ever break 100. So it makes, if that's any consolation to those people listening out there that are still trying to break 100. So talk us through kind of, maybe there was some learning, some staging grounds for your sales career, kind of as things are going. If New Wave was a company that you had some really, really good success at as well, correct?
Yeah. So Olympus was really fun because I was there for like a decade, and Olympus bought Gyrus ACMI in 2008, I believe, 2009, right in there. And I remember at the time, Gyrus ACMI was pretty big at the time. I mean, urology, GYN, and endoscopes. And then we got gobbled up by a bigger, large strategic such as Olympus. And I remember getting folded up into it. And I was like, wow, this is just mind-boggling, the amount of medical devices that are in the marketplace. It's absolutely crazy. And what was cool about that is that you get exposed to the disposable side, the capital side, even from a low capital dollar amount to a high dollar capital amount. And you're getting exposed to GPO contracts. You're getting exposed to, regional contracts. And so you get exposure to a lot of different things where you have 99% of the market share, such as endoscopes, and then you potentially have a lower market share, right? So you get the both sides of the fence where you get calls all the time, but then you need to knock down doors and, break down barriers. And so Olympus really did a good job at cutting my teeth on, doing all the above, right? And if you can be successful doing that, you can really, be successful in a lot of things. I was super fortunate. I got picked up by Bill Green and Mike Blue at New Wave. And those guys, I thought I was, cool because I was doing cool things at Olympus. But then you get to meet those type of guys and you're like, oh my goodness, like you're getting to a whole different level. You're starting at the bottom again. Like you got to prove who you are type of thing to these guys. And what was cool about joining New Wave is you join a company that is literally, going down. They were giving away disposables. They were giving away generators. They're doing placements. And then you come in and you all of a sudden start selling capital at $250K a pop. You start selling disposables at $3,500 a pop. And all of a sudden the company turns around super quick, right? Who would have guessed that you're selling, stuff at a margin and you're making money now, right? And so, and that was super fun. The thing I'd have to say about New Wave in general is that, I came in and the people that I was getting information from in the territory, in the region already, were telling me left and right that you can't do this. No one wants to buy this. No one wants to do this. So you're constantly getting someone that just talking, crap about the territory and the region. And so, a lot of people, most medical device reps can literally at that point say, you know what, this is a mess. I'm not going to do it. This is just too much, right? And then there's others that say, I'm going to go through all the weeds and I'm going to find the nuggets in here and the positives, and I'm going to take those and really get after it and own it and really turn around the region, right? Or my part of the region. So New Wave was a fantastic experience. What was really wild about New Wave, just the selling technique, is that you were doing referral patterns, right? So referral patterns, had never done that before. Like Olympus, you're like straight sale. Like I can do that straight disposable sale. Or capital is like, hey, a capital process, right? So you got like both sides. And then you had the large capital sales where you're waiting for, those budgets to come up every 3-5 years, right? For a huge OR makeover for surgical endoscopy. Now, New Wave was really unique because it got to the point of doing referral patterns. And when you do referral patterns, you need to not only sell the doctor on the clinical efficacy of your particular product, but you need to hit up all the referrals that are sending those patients to that particular doctor, or they're sending somewhere else. And you need to change that referral pattern because that patient needs that particular treatment. So it was a totally different mindset for myself of literally having these conversations with surgical oncologists, medical oncologists, radiation oncologists, and really the cancer center, the patient side of the cell process. And what I found was so difficult about that is that you're literally trying to change the paradigm shift where everyone gets chemo and radiation, and that's just how it happens. But there's another alternative within the guidelines, right? And no one would accept that alternative. It was always chemo and radiation. It's just wild. Absolutely wild.
Yeah, I think I've said this before, but the only people that like change are wet babies, It's just very difficult. But it sounds like you saw an opportunity to do this like a lot of good reps do, where, you're basically saying like, hey, doc, right? Like you're the person that, all of these referrals are kind of ending up at, right? If 100% is getting all of them, you're not getting that. So you're having leakage, right? With your referral patterns. And I'm going to be a good rep and step up to the plate and help you tighten up your referral funnel, right, and maximize the amount of referrals you can do and maximize the amount of treatments that you can do with my, device therapy platform, whatever that I'm bringing you. Like the ability to kind of lean into that value add service offering as a sales rep. Is that something that you think delineates good reps and bad reps?
Especially for our product offering, because there's a lot of product offerings that it's just, there is that connection doesn't exist, that referral type connection. Sure. It just, we know that. But for New Wave, it was the delineation between the good, awesome reps and the bad reps, because the bad reps didn't want to do that at all. They just wanted to sell the widget to the hospital, to the doctor, and then that's it. I'm done, over, right? And then the good reps would say, okay, well, hey, we can take this 6 hospital system, we can create a program out of it, and we can do referrals. And then obviously it skyrockets the usage, skyrockets more systems coming in, right? More platforms coming into the hospital. And then it makes the leakage from that hospital system a lot less, which then then increases revenue downstream to the rest of the cancer center, right?
Yeah, and the whole referral pattern thing, right? It certainly doesn't exist with every device, but I think a flavor of it does exist with every device. Even disposables that aren't like a disposable counterpart to a piece of capital equipment or whatever. And here's the example I'm thinking of, right? I feel like a lot of early stage device companies, they think once you've gotten the PO, you've won the account. On to the next one. Conquest is over. And I feel like the words penetration and utilization do not like really enter their lexicon until they're like, oh shit,
dude,
I need to be like paying attention to this. What is our plan for getting utilization from 25% to 90%? Like, is this resonating at all? It sounds like it is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know this. I mean, I go back to our gyrus ACMI days or harmonic scalpel type days. And I mean, you go in and convert a particular doctor, and then you go in the next day and that doctor's using a competitor. And you're like, wait, I just converted you yesterday and now you're using the competitor the next day. So like, I mean, you got to be on point.
And even like, I know a lot of stuff we're talking about is surgeon focused, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of class 1 and class 2 devices are like nurse driven, right? The nurses are using it.
100%.
The nurses need to know to pull it. I can say this as a nurse. We're an interesting breed. We're creatures of habit. We've got so much crap to deal with, literally and metaphorically on a daily basis, that it's very tough when you're like, hey, you've been doing this thing this certain way for 2 years, 10 years, whatever. We're going to do it a different way. Sometimes it's not hard, or it is simple, but it's also, not that hard kind of deal where it could be like you're just not stocking it in the right place, or you don't have signage showing them where it is, right? Or small kind of human factors, elements of like why they're not pulling it off the shelf or why they're not using it, right?
There's always the dark corner in the sterile core that no one, goes to, and your product is stuck in that little black hole somewhere and no one knows where it is.
Yeah, you've probably seen the same thing where like you go into account to check on it and it's like, why is this not on any single patient? You know what I mean? It's so frustrating, and then you're just like, oh man, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
I have a question too, though. Like, I feel like a lot of reps struggle, especially new reps, struggle with like, some reps think working an account is like, oh, I've got the doctor. They're either in surgery or at the clinic. Okay, here's the clinic. I'm going to call the clinic or go to the clinic, try to get past the front desk, try to get a meeting. That's working that account. And they really don't understand that it's like, that is one piece. There's a surgical services director. You need to call them, and here's when. Or you need to build the relationship here. You need to lean on them. You need to offer this other person this thing. And there's really like 4 or 5 people that grease the skids, give you access, give you updates, right? Like, and make your job a whole lot easier, whether it's pre-vac, after you've submitted to the vac, right? When you're doing a pilot evaluation, or when you're trying to get stock and utilization up, right? So what are your thoughts there on working the account? What's your philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I haven't done it for a while, but to the point that you're bringing up, I mean, having that great relationship with the OR manager, having the great relationship with the OR director, some executive admin champion, and then having a clinical champion, not only from a nurse perspective, but also from the surgeon perspective, because, you know this as much as you can have a clinical champion, a doctor that loves your stuff, but is a wet noodle when they're going and talking to administration. They're like, oh yeah, that guy asks for it all the time. He asks for new stuff all the time. We ignore him. And you're like, well, geez, I got a guy that really likes my stuff, but it's worthless, right? So like, there's a difference between having a clinical champion that's literally will knock down the CEO's door, and the CEO's like, oh shoot, he's coming, I got to listen to him, versus someone that, is always asking for something and it just doesn't mean anything, right? So yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, building the relationships with the entire hospital and knowing the ins and outs of the hospital and is super, super important to be successful, to be honest.
Yeah. And I want to give credit, Mark Copeland, the value analysis whisperer. He had a graphic that was really good about, it was just all these different people. And it was like, know this person, call on this person.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like it was like a diagram of kind of like the different types of relationships and then things that you need to be thinking about when you're working an account.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've got a question too. Like, one of the things I think a lot of early stage companies think about, I mean, exists for every stage company, frankly, but is the assets, the collateral, right? What you're giving your reps, right? And what you're telling them to go in and use. And I think there's some things, kind of rules that are different, whether it's a 1099 rep, distributor rep, whether it's W-2s. I'm sure like if you're working at a growing company, right, and they've got a good marketing department and good product managers, you're going to have kind of no shortage of collateral, binders, booklets, one-pagers, decks, videos. Like, what was your kind of strategy on, what to pull, how to provide enough information, but not overwhelm? Like, I'm curious, like, kind of what were your staples and your go-to out of your arsenal?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of stuff that we provide to our W-2 reps now. We do, a single one pager is always key. I think that's standard across the industry. I think a animation video is absolutely key, right? That's something that I think all reps have on their phone really quick, and they can pull up to show the nurse or pull up to, show the doc, as their, 30-second elevator pitch type of thing. We had a really cool thing that we put together. We kind of modeled after a Stryker. They had a VAC, Value Analysis Committee, binder that kind of had the value proposition built in and kind of what other VACs were looking for. And it had, basic, ROI template, basic, value proposition templates, clinical efficacy type of templates in there, and something that they could literally take and bring to the value analysis committee and show off. So it's usually like 20 some pages. So from our standpoint, keeping it simple from that side obviously goes without saying, having the product on you at all times, right? Tucked into your scrubs or whatever. I mean, I think we've all done that before, and you shoot yourself in the foot in the time that you don't have it on you, right? Yeah. So I think those are the key things.
Yeah, for sure. There's something I think I'd like to see more of this. I don't know if it's happening, but like, I don't know if you've used any of like the low code or no code like tools like Bolt or Vercel or Cursor, where you can basically kind of stand up web apps or websites and with like really kind of interesting interactive UI, right? So example here would be like an ROI calculator in a static PDF printed out. It's kind of like, okay, this is interesting, and you can put in the hospital's data, but it's like, there's an element of like, even when you put in their data for them, they don't feel as much like they were a part of like that process, right?
Right.
So, we were building a little bit of a pitch for someone, and we had an ROI calculator in there and some different things. And like we built, instead of just like doing like building a PDF and sending it to them, we built using Bolt, B-O-L-T, a full page. They could scroll down, then it would have a slider. They could slide different things, an interactive
That's cool.
Bar chart, line chart, you know what I mean? And
that's super
multiple
cool.
things like that as they went through the page.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is so much better of an experience than like flipping through like binders and stuff. And I was like, man, like I'm wondering how that would be received, right? Like you can be too early on things, right? Like the people that you're giving it to, it may not be the way that they want to see it yet.
Yeah.
But I think it's super interesting because you can kind of one-off build them quickly. And then once you've built it once, you can adapt it more easily.
Yeah.
Quick question. I used to use a previous company. We used Showpad, which was a sales enablement tool. Do you guys use that, or?
We used it at New Wave. That was, we had a really cool, actually, I forgot Rebecca's last name. If she hears the podcast, but shout out to Rebecca. She was at New Wave forever, and now she's at Histosonics. But Rebecca introduced our sales team to Showpad, and oh my goodness, we loved that. It was awesome.
It's really great. I mean, we were using it, this was 2021, 2022. Yeah. It's a lot tougher. If you don't have W-2s, it's a lot tougher because they're just, they're carrying a bag of products and like, but if you have W-2s, even if you have multiple products, like the way Showpad has it laid out, and I'm sure they've shipped a lot of new features since I was using it, but having those different product environments and the shareable and the tracking and the tracing, like, oh my gosh, like it, like I can't imagine, as a W-2 having access to that. And especially if you have multiple products and being able to kind of like send that stuff. That's really cool.
It was a little clunky, in like email type of things, but the idea of it, of having all your collateral right there that was searchable, and you didn't have to go to your computer every time. You could go straight to your iPad and you can find it within 15 seconds. That's awesome. Yeah.
One of the things I liked the most about it was like, if you're a nimble company when it comes to marketing, you can like release new versions and then just have it in Showpad as like the place where the reps go grab it. But there's no, you're not putting it on the reps to be like a quality version control expert. You know what I mean? You're kind of just making it easy on them, being like, the one that's in here is the one you use forever.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I've always thought that was kind of an interesting element of it. Okay. So before we jump into VitaTek, like I'm curious, some people are like, oh, my sales philosophy philosophy, consultative sell, and then blank and blank. These are my core pillars of my philosophy or whatever. Kind of from a, I'll say kind of go to market and sales perspective, like what are some core pillars where, when you guys are launching a new product at VitaTek, or maybe you're advising someone, a client that you guys are working with, like what are some core principles that you like to follow?
Yeah. So, I'll just say a couple things out loud that just come to the top of my head, but, we're fully transparent. So we give full transparency to everything that we're doing from a proposal standpoint. We're very expedient and fast. So we, I had a doctor get back to me this morning, and he's like, "Oh, you didn't get back to me." And I was like, "Dude, I got back to you within 2 minutes." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't see the email." And I was like, "Yeah, so expediency of communication is key to our success." I'd also have to say, just from a managing the VitaTek standpoint, my goal as the CEO is to make sure that we have all the superheroes in place here. And so whatever development thing that we're bringing in-house, we have to have a superhero associated with that. So, and I love your platform, and I love what you guys are doing from that platform, which is, I think is going to be a huge help to the marketplace and for majority of people. I think it's awesome and fantastic. Yeah. So from a pillar standpoint, I really think it's speed, transparency, and we want to have the right Jedi Knights. We call ourselves Avengers. Avenger for, the particular skills.
That's awesome. I mean, having the right people's everything. You know what I mean? But I also love the speed. I call it pace of play, right? Whenever we talk about it internally, because it's just something that you can always do better than the big companies, right? Like you should always be much faster. And frankly, you can usually be a lot more transparent, and flexible if that's part of your thing, right? Like maybe it's not, maybe it is. But like, I think that's the thing. Like I've seen a lot of companies do this and like to their own detriment. They're like, I want to be just like the big company. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You want to be different and lean into the things that make you different and better, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, they got there and that's great. But like a lot of the times you like look at the founding stories for these big behemoths and like they were scrappy. They did something different. They had an edge that they exploited ruthlessly. They didn't just pretend to be GE. And that's how they got where they are.
Right. Yeah. You can get caught up in that all the time where you're saying, hey, at the big companies, they do X or they do Y or they do Z. And you're like, okay, well, that's great that they do that, but we should do ABC instead of XYZ. And because it's better and it's faster and, yes, there's a better way of doing it.
Yeah. Steal from the winners, but you don't have to copycat everything they do. So I'll just real quick on I think my pillars.
Yeah.
Using data, I think is a big one, like leveraging technology, because again, it's something that the big companies are not going to be able to do as quickly and be as nimble
100%.
with it. Quick plug to Alpha Sophia, amazing data intelligence software, CPT, DRG, procedural level data. It's got just a ton of awesome stuff in terms of like targeting and being specific about where you're targeting. So I think you really using data and then like just trying to go deep before you go wide, like really, are you going to spend, 10% of your time on 10 different accounts or docs, or are you going to really like drive down on 3 or 4 and get them to a really nice place, right? Like it's just kind of where are you spending your time and like how much are you really executing on focus within those accounts? That's my thing. I mean, I've messed that up too whenever I was managing some 1099s. I'm like, hey, here's a list of 11 clinics and surgeons and 25, 30 surgeons. It's like, what the hell are they going to do with that? Like, honestly, like it's great, but at the same time, and I didn't have the data back then really to be able to be like, hey, like here are the 4 people that you should be going after, these surgeons, because X, Y, Z, whether it's volume, location, the system that they're in, whatever. But that's something I think, going back, I think I could have done a better job at is being more focused with my management of those reps and targeting.
Yeah, data is a good pillar. I like that. It's a good one. And there's just so much data out there nowadays. If you want to talk about LinkedIn, you want to talk about Alpha Sophia, Acuity MD, Clairvoyance back in the day before it got sold to H3, all those data type of companies. I mean, it's great to have that data, but it's almost to the point of like analysis by paralysis type of thing, right? Where you get so much data and you're like, okay, I got all this. Now what do you do?
Yeah, it's very true. Like don't get down a rabbit hole with it, right?
Right.
Because you can be stuck down there. So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about VitaTek.
Yeah.
So if people have eyeballs, right, they should have seen like the content that you guys are putting out, lots of video content like we talked about, which I really love.
Yeah.
But if they've seen anything, they've probably seen you guys talk about everything in-house. That's kind of, the banner that you guys fly, right, for medical device development, manufacturing. Tell me how that came to be. I know a little bit of the story. The audience might not. So I want to hear it from your lips.
Yeah. So after the New Wave exit and after the Aris exit, I had a little bit of money, and I said to myself, all right, I've kind of done the rep thing for successfully, I think, maybe for a long time. And I was like, hey, I want to try something else. I want to make my own medical device. And because I didn't know anyone else that had done it. All my successful friends have never done it before. So I was like, okay, let me do something that no one has done before. So I start going and getting R&D firms, and I start getting proposals from R&D firms here in Minnesota. So I go to all the guys and I start getting proposals. And then so I pick 2 of them. And so I start paying $10K, $20K a month, $40K a month, $50K a month of my own money. And all of a sudden I start realizing, I'm like, holy shoot, this is expensive. Like my wife was like, you cannot do this forever. This is going to bankrupt us. And I'm like, yep, I get it. And I also got frustrated with these R&D companies. They literally will R&D to R&D. They will R&D for 5-7 years. That's how they make their money. If they did it in 2 or 3 months, they would make no money. Not saying they can be done in 2 or 3 months, but just saying like they want it for 5 or 7 years. And so I got frustrated with that. And then I got frustrated with I was trying to explain to these guys what an OR is and like what happens in an OR and And even though they've been in medical device and they're engineers in medical device, these people were never in the OR. So I got frustrated just having to go back to the bare bones all the time. So started up Vita Group about 4 years ago now. We started out with 3 of us, very humble beginnings. We had a couple of large strategics come in and do some small projects with us right away. Fast forward a little bit, we've had 85 medical device companies / universities do projects with us. We've bought 8 medical device companies to date. We have a 9th that I'm in the mix of buying right now. It's a company out of Australia. I should have the deal done sometime in February. We have 2 FDA cleared medical devices being sold in 10 countries around the world. And then I realized I was spending like $30,000, $40,000 a month on regulatory people, consultants. And man, these vampires, dude, I mean, they are just dangerous because they are trying to get the billable hours as high as they possibly can. And they don't care one bit for commercialization. They want to make as much money off of you as they possibly can. As many clinical trials that they can recommend, animal labs that they can recommend, whatever they can recommend to boost up. And so I got so frustrated with that. Went and hired my own team. We have 7 regulatory on staff. I then got frustrated with hydrophilic coating. So, you spend all this money with hydrophilic coating and they say that, oh, we'll figure it out. We can do this. I spent almost $1 million with these companies trying to get hydrophilic coating and manufacturing done. And at the end of it, I had nothing, dude. Zero deliverables. Zero. And so I got so pissed off. I was like, all right, fine. We hired our own chemist. We brought a chemist in-house and we just started making it ourselves. I then got so frustrated with contract manufacturers because contract manufacturers, you go in and talk to them, same thing again. You have to explain what an OR looks like. You have to explain how this is used in the patient. And then the other thing is that gets frustrating is that they have problems in the manufacturing, right? In the clean room. And because they have problems in there, they don't know how to solve them. You would think that they know how to solve them, but they don't know how to solve them. So I'm like, please let me go back there. I'll get in the clean room. I'll wear goggles, blindfold me, whatever you want me to do. Let me get back there and I'll show you how to solve the problem. And they're like, no, we can't do that. Oh, by the way, it's going to take another 6 to 8 months as we figure this out. Oh, and by the way, you owe us another $450,000 because we need to figure this out. But we can't let you back there. We got to do this ourselves. I got so frustrated with that we ended up merging with a contract manufacturer. The cool thing about that is we make about 120 medical devices for about 70 medical device companies. We do anything from arthrectomy devices, thrombectomy devices, laparoscopic devices, ultrasound devices, all different types of instruments, some mechanical engineering with electrical engineering, lights, RF ablation type devices. And we also own our own tool and die mold shop. So our tool and die mold shop, we can do turnarounds in about a month, where if you go go abroad to India or China, you usually have to wait 6 or 9 months. I just had this argument with this guy on LinkedIn the other day. He was like, no, you can get dye molds way, way, way quicker from India or China. Way quicker. It's 3 or 4 months. And I said, okay, when it comes back from India or China, what ends up happening? Well, you need to get revisions because the mold needs to be dialed in every single time because you needed to use the exact representative material. You needed to use the exact machine. And so every single time you needed to dial it in. And so people think that you just go to India or China and you get a cheap mold. Well, no, it comes back and you need to do multiple revisions that 6 to 8 weeks get into the queue every single time. So it takes forever. So we have our own tool and dye mold shop. And then we also have our own ETO sterilization. So instead of waiting a year for ETO sterilization validation, we can do it in a month. So all of a sudden, the dye mold and tool shop where we can save a year, sterilization validation, we can save a year. Our typical motto is that we can bring a medical device all the way from napkin sketch all the way to commercialization for about $1.5 million in less than 2 years. Anything class 2 or below. And so when you start thinking about that, we just brought in balloon development, so we can start doing balloon development in-house. We're about to do catheters, extrusion braiding, and reflow machine. We're about to buy a tray machine to have trays being done in-house. But like, you think about it now. Okay, all these problems that exist in the marketplace, right? You want to, J&J or whoever wants to go create a medical device. What do you need to do? You need to get quotes from 10 different shops. And every one of these shops have to work together because there's a chain and string of communication that goes along. And the dissemination of information from one to the next has to be clear cut, right? It's a huge problem. And each one of them is not aligned with costs. This guy's trying to drive it up as much as possible. This guy's trying to drive it up as well. Everyone's trying to drive up the dollars as much as possible. We're the only ones in the world that have brought everything A to Z in-house. We can do everything. So then all of a sudden, there's none of this, my regulatory team's trying to run up the bill. No, they're actually trying to get done with your project as quick as possible because guess what? They got other shit on their plate that they need to take care of. So like, I'm aligned with our clients.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Couple things I want to talk about. But first, I agree that there are some villains out there, right? Some vampires, but I kind of want to push back a little bit. You know, not all medical devices are created equal, right? And so you may be like, hey, we're doing something that involves femtosecond laser surface treatment, and we really are going to need like that, you know, there's a specific type of regulatory consultant that we might need, and or maybe a specific toxicologist because what we're doing here or there. So like, I'm curious, you know, because there's the everything in-house, right? There's also specialization that may need to happen at certain points. So how are you guys, like, you know, in terms of taking on projects, are you saying, hey, here is the parameters of what we're going to take on, and then say everything in-house? If you're kind of smelling what I'm stepping in, like, I'm curious how you guys think about that.
We get this comment quite often, to be honest. I had it late last night. I was talking to this early founder at like 10 p.m. last night. And he's like, well, I think I want to hire this other R&D shop. And I said, okay, so what are you going to do after that? Well, I'm going to hire this other one. Okay, why are you hiring the R&D shop? Why are you hiring this other one? Well, because they have experience in doing that. I said, okay, so what are you going to do after that? Well, then I'm going to hire this. And then I'm going to hire this. And then I'm going to hire this. And it goes on and on and on to all these shops that he's going to hire. And I said, okay, great. So how do you think this plays out if you're going to hire us? Let's walk through this really quick. I said, so what happens if you hire us? He's like, yes, I'm going to hire you guys. And then, yeah, I need experience in doing this. I said, okay, so we hired that one person. Okay, what else do you need? Well, no, I don't need any specialization anywhere else. I'm good. Okay, great. Now you nailed it down to 2 people instead of 10. The point that I would say, I love this analogy, dude. This is like, get off. This is awesome. So this analogy, dude, I bring up all the time. So I'm like, okay, hey, you're going to go from Arkansas to LA. Okay. Do you want to take a cab to Texas somewhere, Dallas? Do you want to take a scooter from Dallas to Houston?
Right.
Do you want to then take your mode of transportation?
Yeah. Take a bus, take this.
Yeah, take 10, whatever, right? Do you want to do all that? Or do you want to take a cab to the airport and a straight flight to LA? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me. I know what I would do, but I mean.
No, exactly. No, I'm with you. And I know that's probably like, I knew that was probably a common thing that people ask, so I wanted to at least beg the question.
Yeah.
But I'm totally tracking with you. I have a quick question. Like, have you seen Mantle 3D? They make 3D printed tools, right? So for like injection mold tools, I mean, you would still have to like use, you know, your in-house tool shop, right? Would still have to do modifications to the tool if it was needed, right? But it's a really interesting, I would definitely check it out. Like Mantle 3D, they sell the machines that do the 3D printing of the tools. And part of their thing is like, you can get a tool just way faster. right? So curious.
Well, yeah, dude, I'm going to take you on a little journey here. We can talk as we go, but
Yeah,
I'm going
I love it.
to
I love
show
it.
you
This is a first for the Medtech Innovation Podcast. A crib
Bring it on!
style walkthrough. Yeah, crib style walkthrough
Welcome
of the
to
facility.
my crib. Yeah. Welcome to my crib. This is where I sleep. This is where I watch TV. No.
Yeah.
So here's all of our dye molds that we make in house. Here's, all of our injection molders and our machinists back here.
That's awesome.
But I want to bring you over to the Mantle 3D question, because I get that time to time from Proto Labs, because we go on and you can quote out, tooling from Proto Labs too, right? Anyone can do it. Just upload a file into there and do it. So we have our own 4D robot. And so with our own 4D robot, dude, you can take any type of bricks of aluminum.
Yeah.
And we can cut it out and make tooling very, very quickly from it. So we can upload any type of CAD into it. We have a robot pick it off, put it onto the conveyor belt. So we do molds. You can see the different types of molds that we do in here. Small things that are very, very quick. Can turn them around in about 24 hours. Now, aluminum, as you know, dude, it only lasts for like 1,000 parts. Nothing. Yeah. And it breaks really easily.
But still, I mean, honestly, the ability to do in-house aluminum tool making is, from a prototyping and speed perspective, that is really, really awesome. Because, like, you have that conversation a lot about, should we do stainless steel tools or should we do a run of aluminum tools? And then a lot of the times, it's like, even the aluminum tools, the lead time, the cost, you're like, you're kind of stuck in this like middle ground, right? But that's awesome that you guys can do that all in-house. And the Mantle 3D piece, I couldn't buy a tool from Mantle. They're like, yeah, we don't sell them. We just sell the machines that make them. But got to go to one of these vendors, right, to get that. And that was just kind of a quick question I had there. The other piece is more of a comment on, it's not necessarily a medical device, but like a buddy of mine from high school, he's a type 1 diabetic. He launched I guess it's kind of a medical product, even though it's not a medical device, but an insulin pump case that's waterproof, right? So think like OtterBox for insulin pumps. And it's a bit difficult to waterproof something that has a tube coming out of it, but company's called Dye Essentials. And anyways, all that to say, we were working with a Chinese tool maker, and that like dance of, okay, they've got the tool over there, they're doing parts, shipping them over here, we've got to assemble them, hey, this isn't right, and the color is off, and then that, like, there's usually a middleman in between, right? And then it's just that, and then you're like, okay, like, are we there? When do we ship the tool over now? Like, it's honestly, like, it may seem cheaper up front, and like, if you're making just the least complex part in the world, maybe it makes it. But if you're doing anything that's like even the smallest amount of critical dimensions are involved, like, it's honestly not worth it, frankly.
Yeah. Adam, are you on a call? You're on a call. Okay. I was going to have him pull up some mold flow analysis, but dude, I mean, it's bonkers the amount of like mold flow analysis stuff that you ask your vendor that's out of China if they're doing mold flow analysis on your particular part. They have no idea what you're talking about.
No. So a lot of the times, and this is not even like chops in China, but I've even seen it here. Like, they'll just be like, you should change your part. And be like, well, did you adjust the flow rate? What's the screw rate? The temp, the screw rate, like, what are we doing here? How is the first thing we go to is we need to change the design. And look, I get it. Like, not every design is injection moldable, whatever. You got undercuts, things like that. But like, we dealt with that with an ultrasonic weld vendor one time. Like, we were, trying to weld this thing, and there was a part of it that was like a little, kind of a peninsula shaped part, and it was like cracking, right? Because of the vibrations. Change a part. You need to change a part. We were like, we wasted, Jason, 3 months. Then we said, okay, we're going to call another ultrasonic weld vendor. And he was like, yeah, you should just like decrease the frequency and increase the amplitude a little bit. It should decrease the vibrations. It worked first time. And it was like, it was just insane. It was just like, we almost changed, a critical part on our product when they could have just like given it a little bit of critical thinking and fixed it. Right?
Oh, dude.
It's crazy.
We could go on for hours of stories that I have of like, people call us in panic and they're like, hey, can you fix our stuff? And so like, I mean, you can imagine the amount of, but I'll just so I clarify, we have the aluminum, right, 4D robot.
Yes.
We also do
Of course.
H13 and P20
Yeah.
steel. I mean, that's our go-to all the time. Yeah.
Of course. We really could, Jason. I know we could keep jamming forever. I've got a hard out in 3 minutes, but I want to make sure that give you a chance to talk more if you want about like the hydrophilic coatings. I know that's something kind of a bit of a new. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, we're there's a couple things that we really pride ourselves on here. Is we really pride ourselves on providing the AZ services for all medical device companies. We're really, really good for individual inventors, universities. We work with 10 of the top universities in the country, and we do a fantastic job at providing prototypes every single week. We provide a slide deck every single week. We provide pictures and videos every single week, which this does not exist in the marketplace. Literally doesn't. And so we provide transparency on billing every single month. So it becomes very, very easy. There's no fog of war. It's literally, you have full transparency all the way through. So you know exactly what your bills are per month. You know exactly what you're getting per month. And then our goal is to complete in that timeline. I don't know anywhere else that you can go and get that, say, hey, I'm going to spend 1.4 and I'm going to have the product out in 2 years. Great. The other thing I'd say from a hydrophilic coating standpoint, our hydrophilic coating is UV curable. There's no mixing. I used to mix A and B solution just for primer all the time, and then it would expire in 2 hours, and I'd get so pissed, and then I'd have to buy more of it, and then more of it, and then more of it. There's no mixing. It's shelf life stable for 2 years. So the cool thing is, open up the bottle today, use some of it, whatever, open and close it as much as you want. Doesn't matter to us. And then we also, so primer and coating all in one. And then we are trying to disrupt the marketplace. So we're willing to teach people on how to manufacture it and dip, spray, paint, whatever they want to do for their particular medical device, where no one else wants to help people that much. The other thing is we're willing to literally teach people on how to make it. I mean, you talk about taking that grenade pin out and throwing it into the hydrophilic coating space. That is the way to do it. If we can teach everyone on how to make it, guess what then? Your supply chain isn't tied to one company. That one company, do they have enough material on hand to get it to you? Are they on a back order? Are they on whatever? No.
I think that's called a monopoly, Jason. We're anti-monopoly. I'm with you.
So we're going to teach as many people as possible to make VitaCoat. And so then there is no supply chain issue. Yes.
No, I'm with you. I mean, like, we're all like, whether you call it democratization, open source, I'm all for that. I think trying to provide value and kind of have that like rising tide lifts all boats. Like there's a company, Essential, looks like E and then C, Essential. They're a robotic spine platform, and they're open source, unified. They're working with other implant vendors and instrument vendors and things, because they realize the big guys with their robots, like you buy this robot, you're kind of locked into using, it's like, right, you buy a BMW, you can't go to AutoZone and get a part, right? Like it's all AutoZone it's all BMW. That's what you got to use. And they're saying, hey, like we're going to do it differently on the earn out, on the financing side for the capital equipment. And then we're going to allow you to use kind of what you want from this sea of open source. And I'm like, I met with him and I was like, I'm obsessed with this model. Honestly. Well, Jason, we really could keep talking for so long. But everybody, we're going to put VitaTek, Jason, all the contact info and how to get in touch with him in the show notes here. I knew this was going to be a good one if you stuck around. I hope you did, because it was really enlightening for me. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it now, Jason, we got to do a round 2 on this. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't even get to. But, okay, Jason, thanks again for being on the pod.
Thanks, Spencer.
We're going to do this again for sure.
Appreciate it, man.
Okay.
Cheers.
Have a good day, everybody. Take care. Thank you.